Now I'm going to break off a little bit and we're going to talk about some additives here. This here is a Reef Builder by Seachem. It's an additive used to increase or maintain your alkalinity levels in your system. Essentially what this stuff is in this bottle is sodium bicarbonate, which just happens to be the same thing as regular household baking soda. So for a long time I've kind of been using this baking soda in place. It accomplishes the same thing as long as you get a good brand. This is food safe, food grade baking soda. It's going to work pretty good in your tank. It's just as safe. This is another additive. This is used for raising and maintaining your pH levels. Depending on the water source or the type of water you're using, you might run into some pH issues. You can use an additive like this when you're doing your water changes to help take care of that issue. Now, as far as determining your levels and what's needed, that's where these test kits come in. Now, this is a small alkalinity test kit. This is made by Aquarium Systems, and it's a Fast Test brand. There's also other brands, such as this. These are by Salifert. These are my preferred brand, really. But this is an magnesium and a calcium test kit. Now, the alkalinity is important. Calcium, magnesium, stuff like that, these are pretty much requirements for reef tanks. If you're going to a fish-only tank, you probably don't have to worry about these as much, or you can get them later on. If you are doing a reef tank, you're going to want to have those pretty early on before you actually start putting coral and other reef invertebrates and stuff like that in there. Something else that we're going to use, and this is a test kit that you're going to want to have right at the beginning before we even start the process. So make sure you get this one early. This is a master test kit, and essentially all that means is it combines the main 4 testing elements that we're going to use. The first one is for pH, then ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. This is something we're going to test right off from day one. We're going to start going through monitoring the cycle, and we're going to use this to determine when it's safe to start adding fish and other inhabitants into the system. This one specifically is by Aquarium Pharmaceuticals. You can get other brands. It doesn't matter. You want to get a good reputable brand. They can also be bought individually in little boxes like this. Now, moving on to some food. The first thing that I'm going to mention here, food is a very complicated topic. I'm not going to get too far into that. I just want to make a quick note about something here. A good all-around general purpose flake food is something like this. This is Formula One flake food. It's dry. There's also frozen versions, and there's also Formula 2. Formula 1 is, like I said, it's a general all-around omnivore food type. Pretty much anything will eat it, whereas the Formula 2 is a little bit more targeted towards herbivore fish. The ones that are going to eat more algae, stuff like that. It's higher in algae content. I prefer this as my main staple. It's a good one to start off with. Low to no phosphates in there, so it's a good one. Something else is something like this. This is Kent Garlic Extreme. I've talked about this on various podcast episodes and some of the Talking Reef live episodes. It's a good thing. It's cheap. It helps with feeding, and it's also believed to help with the immune system of your fish. There's back to the test kits. I just wanted to mention there's also a nice video at talkingreef.com where we go through how to use the test kits, how to read them, and the whole shot there. So you can head over to talkingreef.com for more information on that. Some of the other stuff that we're going to get into is some of the filtration stuff. I just wanted to show real quick. This is something that's like a Phospan reactor. This is used. It's filled with various types of media, carbon, or the actual Phospan stuff in there if you're having phosphate issues. These are good, helpful, pretty inexpensive. Something that you might want to look at later on, adding to your list. We also have something back here. It's kind of big. This is too big for this system that we're setting up here, but this is just an example of a protein skimmer. Protein skimmer is one of those required components when you're setting up your reef tanks. Fish-only tanks, there's a couple other options, but we're going to focus on the use of a protein skimmer. This is just, like I said, just an example of a large one. If and when a protein skimmer is added to this system, it'll be much smaller. Some of the other things for filtration are going to be your sand and the live rock, which I do have here. Here's some examples of some live rock. When you pick this up from your local fish store, you're going to have either live rock or base rock. These are examples of base rock. Again, there's a few differences, and there's a lot of podcast episodes that go through this. We've got a whole episode on live rock. We've got a whole episode on protein skimmers, so you can head over to there for both of those episodes. The next part of the filtration is sand. I don't have the bucket here, but I do have a bucket of sand for this. There's a full podcast episodes on sand beds, actually a series, there's a few episodes on sand beds, how deep to make them, how to take care of them, the whole shot. So you can head over to talkingreef.com for more information on that, but you're going to want to make sure you have sand ready. The next thing on the list is a type of synthetic sea salt, whether you're using something like this, which is Red Sea Coral Pro. This is something that's specific for reef style tanks. There's also the Instant Ocean version of this too, called Reef Crystals. And then Red Sea and Instant Ocean have their regular type of salt, which can be used in reef tanks, more commonly used in the fish-only tanks. If you use some of those types in a fish-only tank or in a reef tank, you're going to want to make extra careful that you're adding the needed additives in there, like the magnesium and calcium, so on and so forth, that your stuff is going to need. Let's see, the last few items I'm going to talk about are just some odds and ends here. Ziploc bags are also always very helpful for moving stuff around water. When we get later into coral fragging, it's just something good to have laying around because you can move stuff. Another thing, when we're working inside the tanks, working with coral, there's a lot of things in there, especially if you have to dig into the sand bed. I like to use just a regular rubber gloves. Now, if you do use something like this, you want to make sure that you get sterile and non-powdered. Some of them have this powder on them. You don't want to have any of that. There's also commercial gloves that are used for aquariums. They're very long. They cut like shoulder length rubber gloves. You can use those too. I find these are cheap. They're disposable. Use them a couple times, throw them out. It's not so much to keep your hands dry like those longer ones are. It's more to kind of keep your hands and your fingers protected. If you're moving rocks or in the sand, especially, we'll see later on, there's little bristle worms that can get in your fingers, and the little bristles on there can get in your skin, like fiberglass. It's really irritating. It's just more of a protection for both you and the inhabitants in your system. So that's kind of a run through of a lot of the basic stuff that we're gonna use to set up the tank. As we go through these episodes, we will talk about other things that you might need, but this is a really good baseline and a good place for you to start out. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank everybody for checking this episode out. If you have questions or you need more information, or again, if you're interested in advertising or sponsoring with this series or with the site in general, head over to talkingreef.com and all the information's there. Thank you.